Hello and welcome to another time out on Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan. Remember that this program is a platform for all book lovers, writers and literary enthusiasts. Let's make the best use of this moment again today. My name is Michael Olatunbosun. Today we have a novel on the table. It is titled In the Name of Our Father, authored by Olukorede Yishau and published in 2018 by Origami. The author, Olukorede Yishau, is a multiple award-winning journalist. He's a graduate of mass communication from Ambrose Ali University, Ekpoma. Olukorede has won many awards in the media space, including the 2015 Columnist of the Year and Entertainment Reporter of the Year at the Nigeria Media Merit Awards. Olukorede writes a weekly column Above Whispers every Friday in the Nation newspaper, where he is currently an associate editor. In the Name of Our Father is his debut novel. In the beginning of the novel, trouble looms in the horizon for Justus Omoeko, a journalist and writer. He receives a mailman at his house, and the message turns out to be a quick notice from Ayomi, his fiancée. In the mail, he finds a picture of himself and Kyra, a colleague. The picture was taken during Kyra's birthday at a fast food joint. The accompanying letter contains Ayomi's claim that she knows the lady in the picture is his new girl. As if by a special design, Justus receives another letter, this time anonymous, threatening him for planning to publish a book which some people don't want him to publish. In the letter, its author says that Justus must stop working on a book which is based on the life and exploits of a certain prophet. The manuscript of the proposed book is titled Angels Live in Heaven. They don't want the book published, and if Justus persists, he will get the Delegiwa treatment. This is the beginning of the travails of Justus Omoeko and also the crux of the matter. But before the cloud bursts into sweeping rainstorm for Justus, the reader is allowed an extensive peep into the life of Alani, who eventually metamorphoses into Prophet Jeremiah. You are still listening to Book Splash on Splash FM Ibadan, and the book on the table today is a novel titled In the Name of Our Father, written by Olukorede Yishau. In the novel, the author introduces us to Alani, a poor man whose job as cleaner only fetches him a meager life. Alani finds himself embroiled in a pregnancy issue with a 21-year-old girl, Tosin, who has been warming his bed in the absence of his wife and child, who are in the village. One morning, she comes to inform him about the pregnancy. Although he would have loved to suggest an abortion, he restrains himself and only asks Tosin what to do. She suggests meeting a certain pastor who has a soap which will make the pregnancy go away. But it will require some money, which Alani does not have. She volunteers to find the money but wants Alani to refund her when he has the money. In an unfortunate turn of events, Tosin dies after procuring an abortion from Sonny the chemist. The pastor's demand of 1,000 naira is too much for Tosin, so she goes to Sonny, who sells medicine to poor people and also performs cheap abortion for young girls. Here ends Tosin's dreams. On hearing about Tosin's death and fearing that he might be linked with her death, Alani runs to his village, Ayedade. In this chapter of the book titled Double Jeopardy, we read that Alani turns up at his village, but he has another heartbreaking news waiting for him. He arrives at his father's house, but there's nobody in the house. He meets an old woman in another compound who informs him that his sick son has been taken to the hospital. At the healthcare center, the doctor declares his son dead. Alani buries his son, slips what seems like a divorce note to his wife, Abeke, and slips out of the house and his family and village in search of a new life and new beginning. His destination is Igandu, a suburb of Lagos. In chapter 5, titled The Search for a New Life, the author exposes the fakery and hypocrisy of religion and how unsuspecting, vulnerable adherents are exploited for the benefit of the leader. Here, we meet Pastor David, who tells two women prophecies that their friend has already exposed to him about them. After the prayer session, he asks the women to bring money for him to perform deliverance on them. He takes their friend, his informant, to his office and makes love to her before releasing them. Then, his old friend and one-time helper, Alani, arrives to ask to be allowed to do the work of evangelism. Pastor David informs Alani that he will need to join a secret society of elders to be able to excel in the work of the master. Alani agrees. Alani is initiated and given tools for operation, some instructions, what will be needed for the yearly renewal of his powers, and some money as take-off grant to start his ministry. In the course of the book, we see constant renewal sacrifices and rituals performed to help boost, update, and upgrade the ministry of the prophet. In no time, Alani metamorphoses into Prophet T.C. Jeremiah, and pronto, his Amazing Grace Chapel is born. He locates a warehouse for his ministry and recruits his first set of members. In the work, In the Name of Our Father, and this part titled Daughters of the Night, the author gives a vivid insight into the world of commercial sex workers and tells us about Prophet Jeremiah and Rebecca. We read here about how commercial sex workers travel from innocence to prostitution and how some of them are determined to remain in the profession for long. So in this work, Prophet Jeremiah picks Rebecca, falls in love with her, and marries her. In this novel, we read about the exploits of Prophet Jeremiah and how his church has grown, and he himself has become richer. The brotherhood has helped him to get over his nightmares, and Pastor David has taken him to India for more reinforcements. He now enjoys patronage from the high and mighty in the land, including government contract seekers, politicians, and big businessmen. However, his escapades with young girls in the church remains very keen and threatens his ministry as well. For instance, Sister Nkechi, one of the ushers, is pregnant. You are still listening to Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5, and I'm still discussing the novel In the Name of Our Father, written by Olukorede Yishau. In this work, the intrigues begin. One of his trusted men in the church, Pastor Ezekiah, decides to leave. His allegations are that Prophet Jeremiah emphasizes money and uses every means to milk church members, and that men of questionable nature bring money to buy miracles and favors. For Prophet Jeremiah, the man knows too much and must be eliminated. Pastor Ezekiah is abducted and killed. His wife fingers the prophet and threatens court action. The brotherhood is invited by Pastor David to help Jeremiah. A meeting of the brotherhood and all the big people of society attend to give solidarity to the prophet and assure that the case will be killed. On the home front, Rebecca, his wife, suffers another miscarriage, one of the many she has suffered. Her gynecologist informs her that he has done everything medically to salvage her from her serial miscarriages and advises spiritual solution. In this work, the author gives the reader an insight into the personal predicament of spiritual leaders. He vividly portrays a prophet unable to heal himself and his family, but whose acclaimed spiritual authority and power is praised by gullible people both in and out of government. Here lies the irony of religiosity, especially make-believe religiosity among the people. So after 6 miscarriages in over 2 years of marriage, the prophet and his wife hatch a plan to feign pregnancy and then adopt a child to give the world the impression that all is well. In this work, the author perhaps has a sound understanding of what people close to people in government say and why those in government seem to not know what the masses are going through. In this work, we read that the prophet designs an entrapment formula to use on the head of state, but in all his planned discussion with the head of state, there is no plan on talking about how to make the nation better. All we see is how influential people plan to get more from their proximity to power and not how to better the lot of the people. Even the morality of their thoughts does not bother them. In this novel, Rebecca is in London having faked pregnancy back home. The idea is working. Now, she's staying in the big house by the lake, bought from money prophet is able to get from the head of state. But back home, the prophet's nightmares continue. He mistakenly exposes some of his deep secrets to Nkechi. She now knows about the fake pregnancy. She is now determined to have the prophet to herself alone. She writes an anonymous letter to Rebecca to intimate her with the truth about her husband's involvement with someone else who is pregnant. This work deftly explores the phenomenon of betrayal in no small measure, and the portrayal of this betrayal is couched in the toga of deceit. The prophet's secret formula is falling apart. His talismanic hold on his congregation and clientele is wavering, and he now finds sleep elusive, as his sleeping moments are now occupied by nightmares. So, while he is licking his wounds from being told by the brotherhood that the lifespan of his success has lapsed, his dear Rebecca writes from abroad to tell him that it is over between them. She writes to tell him that she has found out his secret. Meanwhile, Nkechi is also about dumping him. It's still Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan, and I'm still discussing the novel In the Name of Our Father, authored by Olukorede Yishau. In this novel, there's a coup, And Justus, the journalist, is arrested after being beaten by soldiers on the claim that he knows about the coup simply because of an article of his in the newspaper where he works. Justus is tried before a special military tribunal and handed a life sentence. The other coup plotters are sentenced to death by stoning. While in prison, journalist Justus sees the corruption that goes on unbridled there, including sexual exploitation of female prisoners by warders, among others. After a couple of months in prison, it is announced that the Commander-in-Chief, General Idoti, is dead. A new Commander-in-Chief is sworn in, and one of his first assignments is to set Justus and others free. At this point, Justus gets the shock of his life. It all becomes clear to Justus that his travails are the result of his insistence on publishing the novella Angels Live in Heaven, and that Prophet Jeremiah's link with General Idoti is why he is implicated in the coup, which is also a stage-managed affair. He understands that the young man who has been giving him information about the atrocities of the prophet is the one who eventually gives him away. This 30-chapter novel is a beautifully written work, and the author vividly deploys powerful imagery to carry home his message. The author intricately deploys sweet suspense with which he successfully draws his reader through the 236 pages of the work, especially making it easy for the reader by making each chapter short and precise. It is now time to meet my guest, Olukorede Yishau, the author of the novel In the Name of Our Father. In this conversation, Olukorede Yishau talks about why he wrote the novel, his influences, as well as the key messages in the novel. The book is In the Name of Our Father. It's a novel written by Olukorede Yishau. Welcome to Book Splash, sir.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you have a very interesting book here, 236 pages of powerful suspense and good storytelling. But let's start with why you wrote the book, In the Name of Our Father.
I wrote In the Name of Our Father because I wanted to document our immediate past history. And what I mean by that is our history under the military. And I didn't want to do it as your regular history. I wanted to make it interesting. And I felt, okay, the best way to do that was to use fiction. Before that, there was something interesting that also happened. I used to work with a magazine called The Source.
Okay.
It was published by Comfort Obi. I worked there from 1999 to 2004. While I was working there, we used to have a column called Night Diary.
Okay.
The idea behind Night Diary is that we were supposed to use it to record our experiences of the night. If something interesting happens to you at night, you write about it and all of that. So largely at that time, the column was written by reporters and editors working for the paper. But once in a while, we allow people from outside to also write in.
Okay.
So one of those ones from outside was about somebody who wanted to become a pastor.
Okay.
Who was now going through all kinds of diabolical stuff so that you have power to be able to get money and how to do fake miracles. So when I read that, I felt that this would make a good novel. But I also felt that, okay, if I just write the story based on that alone, the novel may be too simple. I wanted something a bit complex. So I now like, okay, there is a link between power and religion. And at that time, we had an head of state under the military that people felt wanted to stay in power for life and was consulting pastors, consulting marabouts, consulting afars. So when I read that story, I felt, okay, I can use this religious story, then do a military story, then find a way to link the two of them by saying that the head of state had a relationship with the prophet, who actually wasn't the prophet in the real sense of the word. He did fetish stuff to be able to get the power with which he was deceiving the people. So that was how the idea came in, and So for me to be able to link the two stories together, I now decide on the fact that, okay, the head of state wanted to stay in power for life, and it was consulting that prophet. So that's how the idea came into.
Okay, so and then we have Alani metamorphosizing into Prophet Jeremiah.
Yeah.
And then all the intrigues in between. I understand that, for our contemporary times, it's always easy, based on the fact that you said some people just do diabolical means and then they become prophets and that's it. I understand all these things. I know that they happen around us. But, to find it in a book so vividly portrayed is another thing. And I thought I should ask you, of course, I used to ask a question. They say many times that fictions are a slice of reality. Is this book in any way autobiographical?
It is not, but it was inspired by a real life event.
Okay.
And I think about that time that I wrote it, aside that night diary that I said I read, there is a popular prophet in the country. I won't mention his name.
Okay.
There were so many controversies around him at that time. And somebody came to our office in those days and said that the two of them actually started the church together.
All right.
He said all kinds of things about him and all of that. And in the process of us investigating his claims and all of that, I remember going to the man's hometown to see what I could dig up and all of that. I'm sure in writing this story, some of those things came into play. I can't really be able to pinpoint that, okay, this is the source of this fact, this is the source of this, and all of that. So I believe that some of those experiences I had while investigating that particular story also came into use for me. Because the man came and told us all kinds of things that you feel that it's impossible and all of that. So I'm sure I must have made use of some of those things he told us are really difficult to prove. And you really can't use in a magazine or a newspaper without you getting into trouble.
Oh, of course.
If I found it to fiction.
Okay.
Nobody can arrest me.
I now understand what you mean by turning things upside down and around. So you now have a prophet Jeremiah, you have a pastor Ezekiah, and we are trying to draw some images around them. But basically,
just leave it to the reader
to make their deductions. Okay, so you now have a General Idoti as the commander-in-chief, and you told me that you wrote the book to give a portrayal of.
The truth is that the General Idoti is actually General Sani Abacha.
I know. I was just wondering why you chose the name Idoti for him.
You are Yoruba.
Yes.
So I didn't want it to be too obvious. I decided to go for the Yoruba version or another version of the name. Usually Yoruba, we have more than one name.
Exactly.
For names. So I said, okay, let me call him General Idoti. I feel that, okay, a good name for him would be call him General Idoti. So that was how I came about that name.
Okay, the program is Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5. The author of the novel is here. In the name of our father, Olukorede Yishau is still here. Now, I want to ask this question. You have a very strong portrayal of the life of a prophet here, and every other of the intrigues that go down in this sphere. I just thought I should ask you: Are you sure that you have not said too much about religion? Don't forget that religiosity is a trademark in this country, and you may just have ruffled a few feathers.
Shortly after the book came out in 2018, in an interview I granted, I said the book was written to shake tables. And I remember one question that I'm usually asked about the book is that, have you gotten into trouble for writing this? I said no. One of the first set of people who read the book, some of them actually turned out to be pastors. My immediate elder brother is a pastor.
Okay.
My neighbor at the time the book came out was a redeemed pastor. Then my colleague in the office, whose father read the book and insisted that he must call me and congratulate me, is a CSC pastor. The book is not against any religion. It's against fake people. So that's what I've always stressed. And I know a number of people, because they see my son in Yishau, they feel that, okay, a Muslim is attacking Christian. And I tell them I've been a Christian for at least 16 years of my life. So I'm not a Muslim. So, and I try to clear that it is not an attack on Christianity. It is an attack on people who are giving Christianity bad name.
Okay.
It's an attack on people who are really not using the Bible to do whatever miracle they claim they are doing. They are just deceiving the people using our Father's name. And our Father in this sense is God.
All right.
So,
Okay. All right. So let's return to the book, In the Name of Our Father. I'd like you to tell me the key messages or the key motives that you have in this work for Nigerians, particularly those who are listening to us on the program Book Splash.
For me, there are two key messages, and one of the two messages is that God does not have contractors. He gives all of us brains, and He expects us to use our brain. We don't need what I call prayer contractors to get to God. We can pray on our own, and if it is the time for God to grant our request, certainly we grant it. We can pray from now till eternity. If it is not time for what we are asking for, He won't do it. He knows the time for things to happen in our lives. So when it is that time, He will grant our request.
Okay.
If it is that we can't deal with it, He won't grant it.
Okay.
And so on that basis, I'm like saying that, see, we don't need to sublet our lives to pastors. Of course, because they pray more than some of us, they can intercede on our behalf. But it shouldn't be that for every single thing we want to do in our lives, if our pastor has not said yes, we won't do them.
Okay.
So I feel that we shouldn't sublet our lives.
All right.
Our pastors, they are not prayer contractors.
Okay.
The Old Testament, you need intermediaries to get to God. The New Testament, I have the same access to God as pastors.
All right. Okay, so is there anything that you have put in this book that on looking at it a second time you think you should not have added to the book?
I don't think there's anything like that. If there's anything I have felt I should change, maybe I felt, okay, we could have been more thorough with making sure there are no mistakes. But in terms of the story and its content, absolutely nothing that I feel like taking out.
So how long did it take you to put this book together now? I know you said that you wrote it when you were 24 and you kept it all the while. But in putting it together, how long did it take you?
I think it's just about 3 months.
Wow.
I think it's just about 3 months for me to do what we call the principal script.
Okay.
Of course, over the years, I will change one thing here. What you have there now as the beginning of the novel wasn't the original beginning. If you look at the book, you will see an area where the narrator was saying, why me? Something like that. I think that was where the book started when I wrote it originally in 2002 or 2003.
Okay.
But along the line, over time, I felt that wasn't catchy enough. So I kept readjusting. And one thing I also tried to achieve with the beginning of the book is to draw you near and force you to read.
Yes. Yeah.
And I also wanted to do something subconsciously, that if you pick this book, I wanted your mind to also go to Things Fall Apart.
Okay.
So that's why the first line has something like, the center
Cannot hold.
The major thing was I wanted something that would draw attention and make you want to go further than the first paragraph. And before you know it, you will have finished the prologue. Before you know it, you will have gone into the prophet story. Then you will get confused a bit and wonder, what just happened? Then when you now get to the last chapter, you now understand the connection between the two stories.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to say thanks to you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
That was my conversation with Olukorede Yishau, author of the novel In the Name of Our Father. I hope you liked it. If you did, please join me next Saturday, same time, for another time out on Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan. Thank you for listening, and thanks to my sound manager, Victor Daudu, for a job well done. But before I go, I have 20 books for 20 listeners today. To win a book for yourself, just tell me the title of the book I just finished discussing today. Send your answer and your name as text message to 0805 699 8676. And please note that only the first 20 text messages that I get today will get the books each. Also note that this offer expires 4 p.m. next Friday. For comments or queries, please send me a text message 0805 699 8676 or email Olatunbosun@splashfm1055.com. Follow me on Twitter @MikeTunbosun. I am Michael Olatunbosun, and I urge you to read the book today.